Welcome to the Red and Green Report.
Orale, let's do this.
Yo, welcome to episode 7 of the Red and Green Report. Been very busy lately just with teaching and handling different music industry business, but I am back. Today's unofficial sponsor is Cantero Brewing over there on Columbia Northeast in that industrial area. I never had the addresses ready. I need to start doing that. But you have Google, check it out. Cantero Brewing. My parents and I went there for Taco Tuesday, and the tacos were surprisingly very good. I had the carne asada, the shrimp, and I believe the barbacoa, and their salsa was really good, and the tacos were pretty big. They were a lot bigger than what I've seen around town at different spots. But Cantero Brewing, definitely check it out. Their beers are really good. Their pale ale is really good. Go check it out. Today's guest, another brother from another mother. We've known each other, I think, 3.5, 4 years, maybe? Probably should have done some more research on this. No, it's all good. Today, a good friend of mine is on the show. We're going to hear his story. Just recently received his PhD from the University of New Mexico. I know he's happy to be finally done. I got to attend his dissertation defense, which was really inspiring, by the way. But welcome to the show, the good homie Uahikea Maile. Welcome, man. What's up?
Not much. Thanks for having me, John. I appreciate your willingness to have me on the Red and Green.
Dude, we've been talking about this for a long time, and I'm so happy it's finally happening.
Yeah, me too. And 7 is my favorite number, and it just so happens that this is episode
7.
Oh my God, man. Episode 7.
I had DJ 3 on, and he was episode 2, so he was like, yo, is there any way we can make this episode 3? And I was like, dude, I already kind of shouted out the episode number, but whatever. That's cool, though. I'm glad this one worked out. How does it feel to be done with your dissertation?
It feels like a ton of bricks have been lifted off of my shoulders, and I feel lighter.
Yeah.
In the kind of physical sense of every step I've taken since Tuesday, really, because Tuesday was the day that I got approval from the UNM Office of Graduate Studies officially that the dissertation was stamped with their approval, and I had met all my requirements for the doctoral degree. So it was nice. Like the final step of you're good, you're done,
officially done.
Feel free to have a beverage.
Have the emails stopped? I'm sure you get tons of emails a day.
You know, I've been getting a lot more UNM alumni emails.
Yep.
And that's been interesting. I appreciate them. It's kind of nice to get some recognition before I'm actually an alumnus of UNM, that it's impending. The more emails at the minimum in my generous read just demonstrate to me that it's real.
Yeah.
And that not only do I kind of physically feel that it's real and kind of have this like more heightened sense of what I'm doing physically and my own emotional state since it's been done, but also other people are recognizing that it's done.
Yeah.
So it feels
That's
really
great.
good. It's
Nice.
not just me like, oh yeah, I'm done. It's also like the university, organizations on campus, other people, like even just like asking that question is kind of, it hit me, you know? How does it feel to be done? It feels really good.
Yeah. There's no more waking up like, I got to work on my dissertation today. I bet you still probably have that notion, like, man, I got to do some typing. And then you're just like, well, shit, I'm done.
Yeah. It's waking up is like a trip because it's no longer the sense of anxiety and stress over like working through ideas and then also having to put them on paper and doing that through, like you're saying, like typing and like how fast can I get to my computer in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how much time am I actually sitting in front of my computer that I can do that translation of the ideas onto the page?
Yeah.
And that is taking a pause right now.
Uh-huh.
You know, the dissertation itself is done. And now I'm moving
Mm-hmm.
on to the next stage. And so there's like a transition between the two. And I never really understood what people meant by that. There's, you know, a huge difference between your dissertation and your book, because I will be publishing my dissertation into a book, but it will be very, very different. You know, it'll take
You're
me
probably going to add some more chapters, some different information, some different knowledge. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, like how the dissertation defense worked. You know, the presentation I gave was kind of talking about what I did, some ideas of where I want to go, and then the committee. You know, I had 4 different professors that were on my dissertation committee that oversaw the process, read the whole project, and have given me written feedback. And then at the defense, after my presentation, gave me like verbal feedback in the form of questions mostly. And those questions are going to propel the transition from the dissertation, which is done, signed, sealed, delivered. You know, give me my degree. Just make sure that there's no UNM old seal on it.
Yeah, for sure.
Give me the anti-colonial, anti-racist UNM seal.
Word.
And now I get to think about working on what the book's going to be. And so like one cool example that came out of the defense was one of my faculty members, Noilani Goodyer Ko'opua, who's at the University of Hawaii's political science department, was asking me about my title and kind of more specifically the work of what my title, which is Gifts of Sovereignty, does in the dissertation. And if, as I argue in the conclusion of the dissertation, a gift of sovereignty is Olelo Hawaii, or Hawaiian language, then why not title and use a different analytic than gifts of sovereignty that is in the Hawaiian language?
Okay.
And so that really resonated with me because it's something I thought about. Like, why am I doing this? Why not say, you know, na makana ea, which is like kind of literally the gifts of sovereignty.
Okay.
And her comment motivated me since the defense to be like, you know, I need to think more about the title for the book and whether or not I want to push forward this idea of gifts of sovereignty or really kind of push forward the idea of na makana ea.
Very cool, man. So you have a lot of thinking to do, and you have a lot of writing to do, and I want to get into all that. But first, I kind of want to hear your beginning steps. Like, where did you? So you're from Hawaii, right? And I apologize if I butcher that. But
Hawaii. You know, sometimes I've got a funny story. Sometimes people who grew up in Hawaii, whether they're native Hawaiian or not, mispronounce Hawaii in a weird like sense. So like when I say Hawaii, I don't actually think that that's the correct pronunciation because I'm saying Hawaii, which would be H-A-W-A Okina-I, but it's H-A-W-A-I Okina-I. Hawaii versus Hawaii or Hawaii.
Okay.
So there's this weird like thing that makes it faster. And so typically when I say Hawaii, it's a product of that kind of slang, I guess, where that first I just drops. But then when I want to be really conscientious, I'll say Hawaii because W is pronounced.
It's a V.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
V sound, yeah.
Yeah, but it's even I say it wrong.
So what island were you born on?
So I was born on Oahu, and I was born in Honolulu. And Honolulu is the kind of capital city of the so-called state of Hawaii. And so I grew up in town most of my life in Honolulu. My mom, Patricia, my dad, Keith, had me after my brother, who was born with the name Daniel, but goes by Kapaliku Kalani. And so in a lot of ways, I've kind of followed my brother's footsteps to identify and come into my own Inoa Hawaii or Hawaiian name. And that's why while my parents named my brother Daniel and me David, you I identify with my Hawaiian name, Uahikea Ohu, and Uahikea preferably, or Ua for short.
Mm-hmm.
But we were both born in the same hospital, a year and a half apart, in Honolulu. My parents lived in Honolulu for a good kind of early portion of their lives, had us. We stayed around there, living fairly close to the University of Hawaii in Manoa, which is in Honolulu. We were homeschooled, my brother and I as kids, by my mom. We were homeschooled for my brother up until the 9th grade, where he then attended Kamehameha Schools, which is a private school in Hawaii across the Hawaiian Islands, multiple campuses, that was founded by one of the last rulers of the kind of Hawaiian kingdom.
Okay.
And
I was going to ask you that too, yeah.
Yeah, and she inherited a lot of assets, land, money from her family that were the kind of elite or like chiefs of the Hawaiian kingdom. And when she passed away, her will initiated a process to create a school for Native Hawaiians specifically.
Oh, I have a friend of a friend. He's traveled throughout Southeast Asia, and one of his favorite places to work, I think his parents have a business out there, is what he said, is Hawaii. And I was telling him, I have a good friend, from there, and he went to King Kamehameha High School. And he goes, oh, man, your friend must be, Native Hawaiian, because not just anybody can go there. Yeah. It's a high school tailored specifically for the culture of Hawaii. Yeah, Hawaii. And it's like, man, I need to ask Ua that. And I'll ask him on the podcast. So it's cool you brought that up, yeah. But they're all throughout the islands.
Yeah, there's one campus on Maui. There's a campus on the Big Island. There are other smaller campuses peppered throughout most of the islands. Like there are like satellite campuses on Oahu, for instance. I don't know if there's another big campus other than Oahu, Hawaii, and Maui. I'm not quite sure. But when I was in school, I was at Kapaa Lama's campus, which is the first campus. And my brother went there first after he was homeschooled. And then I went to 8th grade at a public school that same year because I couldn't stand the thought of being alone at home with my mom teaching me.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to get out.
And I was homeschooled for a year because I got into some trouble. But it was rough, man. I mean, just being a high school kid at home with my mom all the time, who's also an educator. It was just kind of like, we're going to wake up in the morning and do this like school. Yeah. And I wasn't used to it. And that was hard. So, yeah, just the different experiences with homeschool, it's tough,
Yeah, my partner, Yarrow, is also, she and her brother were also homeschooled.
Okay.
And so we talked a lot about kind of the similarities and differences that we experienced as kids that were homeschooled by a parent or parents. And it's funny. It's funny how like folks that were homeschooled find each other out in the real world later on. Because I remember as a kid going to homeschooling, like workshops and testing, and there was like a cohort of folks that were being homeschooled on Oahu that would come to this specific location to do stuff. And I have found one of those folks in the cohort recently because her husband worked sort of with my mom, and then my mom connected with this person, and then I reconnected with that person as well, and we were like, oh my God, like homeschooling. Yeah. Thank God we survived. And so Yarrow and I are like,
yeah. I mean, both of you, you did it what, 7 grades?
Yarrow did it for less than I did, and I was homeschooled for like 7 years, and my brother like 8 years. And we know folks that have done it like their entire life.
Yeah, I'm sure though, like once you hit puberty, like once you start, it's like, man, I want to change the surroundings. You know what I mean? Because elementary school students are pretty, resilient, I think. But once you start getting older and you start seeing the different activities and you start looking around town and you're finally noticing things that you haven't noticed before. You're like, man, I want to go do that. And I even had that feeling, knowing full well that I had gotten in trouble and I had to pay the consequences. It was like, man, this is this is rough. But yeah, man, that the amount of time is wow. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, and I got to give props to my mom.
Yeah, word up, man.
I hope that she listens to this podcast, and I hope that she hears me say that. I really, and my brother also, like, we very much appreciated the labor that she performed to teach us. And I think where my brother's at and where I'm at, while not fully, but certainly partly a testament to how she taught us. You know? My dad worked mostly, and my mom not so much. So she stayed home with us and taught us math, science, English. Yeah. And it was a lot for her to take up, and I really appreciate that she did, even though I had a complicated relationship to being homeschooled. Because for me it was very like Christian and religious based, and coming out of that, I am not Christian, and I don't identify with institutionalized religion, and that was a tumultuous time for me. But despite that, my mom still held it down. And my brother and I, are so thankful that she did for us.
That's what's up. Yeah, looking back at it, my mom also made a lot of sacrifices, just the position that I put her in, or my family in. And we ordered the curriculum. You're going to do this, this, and that. We'll start at 7:30. We'll do this at 8:30. We'll do this, take a break, do this at 10, and then, lunch, and then study homework. But I think it made the relationship between me and my mom stronger. And, even till this day, I try to go over to the house whenever I can. And like, we look back at that moment and kind of laugh. But at the time, man, it was rough.
Yeah, totally. I will say that for me, I had a really maybe sort of like combative relationship with my mom. And I'm sorry, Mom, I apologize. As a kid, through homeschooling, because, maybe at the time I was feeling pretty disciplined by the kind of religiosity of the homeschooling and all the curriculum and whatnot, but also as a child being taught by my mom every day during the weekdays, at home. And, I developed kind of like a lot of, I guess, animosity, maybe not necessarily towards her, but maybe sometimes towards her. And, that was hard. And I recognize it was hard for my mom to teach a kid who was like, could get pissed, and we'd get into fights. And, I had to like go to school. I had to go away from home and to really appreciate what she did for me and what she did for us. And, unfortunately there's kind of like a alienation in that, right? Like I still was like a bratty little kid to my mom, right? But
we all were.
Yeah, but it's thinking about it now, it's like the relationship that I have with my mom is what it is because of the labor that she did. And I know that I wasn't an easy child to teach, and
me too. Jeez. But it takes those adults in our life to plant those seeds. Yeah. And then they, look at how we've become, and all in all, I think I'm a pretty good human being, you know what I mean? But yeah, it takes that time and effort for someone to plant that seed, and it's not going to happen right away. Yeah. It took some time. Yeah. But we definitely appreciate those moments and the education and the sacrifices that were made for us to be where we're at now.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah. So 8th grade is when you left the homeschool.
It's when I bought a sterling silver chain. Oh. Spiked my hair.
Nice.
Played basketball like 4 times a day.
Yeah, 8th grade. Skateboard? Yep. Did you skateboard?
I did. I practiced
that's one
a lot.
Regret. Yeah. One regret I have is I didn't start skate. I could still do it, but I don't want to be that guy, falling down all the time, posting his injuries. What middle school did you go to?
I went to Kaimuki Middle School in Honolulu, right next to Diamond Head or Leahi. And I went there for 1 year, 8th grade. Honestly, had the time of my life. Yeah. got into some trouble,
Oh,
and
yeah,
I was
man.
like, hell yeah, I can get into trouble in school,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
and it was kind of cool, right? Because it wasn't like I was getting in trouble with my mom. It was like getting into trouble with, I don't know, other people
Yeah.
at this school, and made
you-
some shitty friends, made some
Yeah.
good friends.
Were you a fighter?
No.
No,
Actually,
okay.
I just told this story. Well, Yara and I talked about this story the other day. I was awarded at the end of 8th grade with the prestigious recognition of most resilient student.
Ah.
But there's a particular story I think that supports why I was given this award. And I think my math teacher at the time in my 8th grade, like second semester, nominated me because one day a friend of mine was talking shit to another guy who I wasn't friends with but knew. And I think that he was suggesting I was talking shit about him.
Ah.
And eventually it came around to me that
Middle school moments in history. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
this is the Dramalani of my 8th grade year. And so this guy eventually tells folks that he wants to like meet me after school.
Ooh.
And so I find out and I'm just like shitting bricks, you know? And I happen to have to go to like a study hall with my math teacher, and I told her because I was like, you know, about to shit myself because I didn't want to go to the gym
Yeah,
and
scary
meet up
moments,
with this guy.
man. Yeah, man, definitely.
I was a young kid and didn't want to fight, and it also wasn't my fight.
Yeah.
So
It wasn't me, man. You got to understand.
Yeah. So I was at my math class, which was on a second floor of a 2-story building, and you could see the gym from that second story. And I remember telling my teacher and then walking out and kind of looking at the entrance of the gym adjacent to that building, and I could see a crowd gathering.
Oh, brutal.
And then I could see our security guard for the school like break it up.
Yeah.
So eventually me and this guy like figure it out, and we're like, okay, this friend, so-called friend of mine, was the instigator.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that that's kind of like what he did. And so I was his fodder, right? And so then he was no longer my friend.
Yeah.
And I became friends with the guy who wanted to kick my
Hey,
ass.
man, communication, bro. It's all about communication. How many problems can we just get rid of if we just talk to each other? Great story, man. Yeah. So your brother, he was in high school at that point.
Yeah, he was in
okay.
9th grade at Kamehameha.
I was lucky because the middle school I went to was also the high school. That's just kind of how it is on most military bases. So my brother, when I was in 7th grade, he was a freshman. And I got into a whole bunch of stuff when I was in 7th grade. But older brother bailed me out most of the time.
Nice.
So, Nick, thank you very much, man. But, yeah, and then we ended up going to high school together, and I played football. And there was this thing called Freshman Friday. So the first week of school, on Friday, the seniors would go after the freshmen. So on the football team, they were telling me, like, John, watch your back. We're going to come and get you. And it's like, what? Like, we did summer practice. I know all you guys. Like, we're cool. You know, we're teammates. You guys are going to, they're like, yeah, dude, we're coming after you. We're going to kick your ass. And so I forget who it was. One of the seniors was like, man, we can't go after John. That's Big Nick's brother. And I was just like, yes. And then, my brother, it's like, nah, man, that's my brother. If anybody's going to kick his ass, it's going to be me. So, yeah, man. So middle school, you did middle school for 1 full year.
1 full year.
And then to Kamehameha High School.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
Nice.
I started in 2002 as a freshman at
That's when I
high school.
graduated high school, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, now kids are starting to get ready to graduate
I know.
in 2020.
I know, dude. 20
Almost
years later.
20 years
Jeez.
later. There's a student at UNM who I did a talk in a class that he was in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, it must have been not this spring, but last semester in the fall. And the class was taught by a colleague of mine in the Department of American Studies, and he's like, "Oh, come talk about this article you published." And I'm like, "Sure." The student happened to be a graduate of my high school.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, "Yeah, I graduated, like a couple of years ago." And I'm like, "Oh, I graduated in 2006." I was like, "Damn, I'm old."
Yeah, man. I remember being at the bar, and some bars have that sign, and it says you need to be born on this day, and like the other day it was like 1999 or some shit like that, 98, I forget, but it's like, whoa, man, that's when I started high school,
That's a trip.
Man. So did you do any high school sports?
I did. I played basketball a little bit. I ran more though. So I ran cross country and track.
Nice.
Got really into running by way of trying to train for basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Then I broke my wrist one summer, and it was because I was playing summer league for our high school. And that end of the summer, I started to cut back on any kind of like basketball playing and do a lot more conditioning.
Yeah.
So I ran a lot. And eventually I was like, I should run cross country because it was like the very first season in the fall semester. And then basketball started later. So I was like, all right, this is sweet. So I ran cross country, got really into it. I wasn't like the best on the team. We had really, really good runners. Shout out to Jeremy Kamaka'ala and all the cross country kids at Kamehameha. Kupa'ahi, current coach, my former teammate, was better than me, but still friends today.
That's what's up, man. Yeah.
So I then ran track, didn't play basketball, and really got into like middle distance track running. So like 800, the 1500. Wasn't really like a long distance fan.
Yeah.
Cross country was more like it was a 5K race in high school, and it was more for conditioning for me, I guess, and then the kind of middle distance track running was like super fun.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up being encouraged by my coaches to run in college. And one of my coaches, Harvey McInerney, shout out Harvey, he used to always tell us we'd be running. So our high school was on this hill, this like big hill, and we'd run hills like twice a week.
All the time, yeah.
It was brutal, but we'd be running like these gnarly hills. And he'd be posted up behind a tree or something and be like, "All right, Maile, no one else does this." And so all the like graduates and alumni of like Kamehameha cross country and track always like remember Coach Mac being like, "No one else does this." It's like, Mac, like people run hills elsewhere.
Yeah.
This isn't the only hill.
There are more hills in the world, man.
But it was nice because he, even though I wasn't like the best runner, like I'd be like maybe 6th or 7th best, maybe. And I didn't run cross country states. I ran the like division championship in track, but that was the best. And he was like, you should try to run in college. Like you're just starting. Like this is like great. You like it. You can grow. And so I took his advice and talked to coaches when I was looking for colleges, and ended up running in college, cross country and track, and that was pretty fun.
Where was that? So you graduate high school. Where was your first? What was your first college or university that you went to?
So I went to Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon, which is a small kind of agricultural town in Oregon that's about 45 minutes west of Portland, about 30-ish miles west of Portland. So it's closer to the coast, the Pacific Ocean coast, than Portland is.
Okay.
It's like right in between the coast and Portland.
All right.
So
you're closer to the water than Portland is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely. So I went there, and I got a scholarship to do competitive speech and debate because I did that in high school. For all 4 years of high school. My brother did that too.
Oh, nice.
My parents really like advocated for us to like
Why
do something
speech?
like that.
Why debate? Oh, because of your parents, or did you have an interest, or?
Our parents encouraged us to do it, and we had interest as well. And I think it was kind of a really good match because we both needed to develop our social skills and our kind of like public speaking skills after being homeschooled and all that.
I was watching you at your defense, and I'm like, how is he not pulling his hair out right now and running out of the room? Because that's exactly what I would have done. But yeah, hearing that you have the past of debate and public speaking, it all makes sense now. So that's what's up, man.
I definitely was in my mind pulling my hair. And
Well, you couldn't tell.
I had to
you hit it very well.
So this is how I like process like those kinds of moments that are like, I don't know, to me, overwhelming. They are overwhelming.
Yeah.
I used to teach public speaking at UNM as a early PhD student in communication and journalism because that was the first department and program that I entered, and then I switched to American Studies.
Yeah.
But I used to tell my students, like, everybody is going to feel something when they're approaching a public speaking moment. It's about how we deal with those feelings where we can learn and perform to the best of our ability. And so like I have to take a lot of time to think about how important something is, like a dissertation defense, like we talked about before, like the week before my defense, I was just like so anxious, getting panic attacks, crying.
Oh man.
I went to hot yoga with Yarrow, and it was like the Sunday before the Monday when the defense happened, and I remember I was just like dying from the yoga, and it's super hot, and I'm like then starting to feel about how important the defense is, and like I could maybe not pass, and then like what are people gonna think of me and all this shit. And so I have to like take myself there. I have to like cope with the loss of something in order to feel confident enough to possibly go through it.
Wow, that's an interesting technique. Shoo. I know before a show, I get pretty nervous, but that's why we practice, we rehearse. I have the microphones here. I'll stand in front of the mirror. I'll imagine what the crowd reaction is going to be. I'll go through that night like, okay, dude, it's only 20, 25 minutes. Like, it's going to be over like that.
Yeah.
So I'm just imagining, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I start feeling good, and then I get to the show, and it's like, oh, man, look how many people are here. Like, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to get booed off stage. I'm going to fuck up a song. But then after those first, 2-4 bars, and I get into it, I'm like, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
So I bet, like, after you started speaking to the crowd at your defense, you probably maybe relaxed a little bit.
Definitely.
And and once you start, you're like, all right, this is going to be fine. And then even when it's all done, like they gave you the okay, the thumbs up, you were just like, oh, that was, I mean, I bet you were like, oh God, thank God this is over. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? Wasn't that bad?
Oh yeah. I mean,
it's definitely like people like us who prepare and practice and know what we're getting into, and we support ourselves, and like you said, we have those coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
We're gonna do fine.
Yeah, definitely.
You're gonna do fine. I'm gonna do fine. Show's gonna go good. Defense is gonna go good. Public speaking. It's just, but yeah, it is nerve wracking all the time.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I've adopted such a different strategy to, I guess I could call it like public speaking in this stage in my life, because when I was in high school, we were taught and disciplined to really be like, try at least to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's in a debate, insofar as like not enunciating vocal pauses like
yeah,
or
see, that's me.
or like the speech side of it, where like you could not do that. Like you had a written script that you'd prepared for like a persuasive speech or an informative speech or some kind of performance of poetry or prose, maybe sometimes with a partner too.
Yeah.
And the idea was like you practice until you have it memorized, and not just vocally memorized, but physically, expressively memorized. Like what physical movement, face expression you're gonna do, like at each point, and then you practice, you have it down, and you do it, and you execute. And so that's kind of how we were taught in high school and in college as well. But by the end of college, even doing speech and debate, it was like it's one kind of mode and reality of experience, and it's not always real.
Yeah.
Like, you don't always have to be perfect in speaking. You don't like it, in real life. There are times where it's important to do that, right? When you're talking to power, for instance, right?
Yeah,
when you go to a board of regents meeting at the University of New Mexico, you want to like show them what's up, and you want to be as accurate with your content and as persuasive with your messaging as possible. But when you're just talking to your friends or like your family or other people, I found that sometimes it can be disingenuous, honestly. So I had to kind of like peel back that discipline and realize that, like, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. And so I did slam poetry when I first came to Albuquerque.
Nice. And
it was a different mode of public speaking and relating to people, because you could play more with the audience. You could be, in a sense, like more expressive because of the kind of activity that it was. You know, we get crowds of like, you know, hundreds of people at the National Poetry Slam, and it was a lot more capacious and open. And so I started to learn to like think about my audience more in a larger sense in how I present, you know, poetry, for instance. And so when I do a defense or like when I do academic presentations, I write out my presentation. Because to me, it's valuable to be accurate with my analysis. And that the other like qualities of performance will just come through me. And so that's kind of like my approach now, and what I employed for the dissertation defense, where it's like, I'll kick my ass preparing that script that I'm going to read, but then I perform it. And then people feel the quality of the performance from like the speech and debate background and from the poetry background through this like academic, you know, analysis.
And that's the, you know, with performing hip hop or, you know, rapping, it's very, there is a discipline to it, but, you know, like you said, it's a little more relaxed, and, you know, we can engage with the crowd, and sometimes the music will cut off or there's a technical you know, difficulty, and you kind of got to go along with that. You can't just stop. And I've seen shows where people just stop, and it's like, no, like, do something, man, you know, freestyle, make a movement, make a joke. But yeah, people just stop and they shut down. But just having that discipline, like the preparing for the show. But yeah, again, you know, there are certain speaking or performing aspects that you could be a little more open with than others. But yeah, like turning off that discipline sometimes, you know, like sometimes I get a little too hip hop with my parents, and they're just like, "What? What did you say?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is what I mean."
My favorite is when my mom, going back to when we'd fight as a kid, she'd be like, "Stop debating me." Mom, I'm not debating you. I'm just talking. Stop debating me.
That's interesting, man. That's funny. So, where were we? Pacific University?
Pacific University, yeah.
That was was that your first time outside of Hawaii?
It wasn't my first time away from Hawaii, but just because we had gone to visit my mom's side of the family that lives in Washington, California. We'd gone a few times as kids. I'd come to California for speech and debate tournaments in high school, but I had never been to Oregon. I'd never been to Oregon, where Pacific University is, and I didn't. I don't remember. I might have visited one time. No, you know what? I did not visit. There was like an event for the cross country team that you could visit and check it out, but I don't think I did, because I had to save my money to just go. Like I paid for like all my education. My parents have helped me here and there, but not really as much as like my own primary funding of my schooling. And I worked my ass off. After senior year in high school, graduation, I worked 2 jobs, like a morning job and a nighttime job. And just in preparation to pay for my school. And so I couldn't go visit first and then head to school. So I went in like August, and I remember this is a good story. I remember I flew out from Hawaii and I was like sick, super sick, like
brutal,
bad cold, allergies, like felt terrible. And because I was trying to like fund all this, I had a standby ticket that my friend's mom, who was a flight attendant, hooked me up with.
Oh, nice.
So I had to stand by at the airport to get on a flight to go to
a lot of waiting.
Portland.
Yeah.
And I had to wait, and we were like, oh, it might not happen today.
Oh.
So I packed it right. Like I pack up all my stuff,
Yeah.
say bye to my family, and like sad. I'm also just like sick. And I'm at the airport waiting. And then eventually like my name gets called and then I hop on the plane. I'm like, whatever. So I arrive to the airport in Portland and this guy drives through the arrivals with a sign with my name.
Like he's driving?
He's driving, just him. And he's got like a little like sign out of like a cardboard box that he cut out and wrote my name on it. And I'd never met him before. Adrian Shipley. So that's my welcoming to Oregon, to coming to Pacific. And he was a student at Pacific, ran cross country, was tasked with picking me up.
Oh, okay.
So we get back to Forest Grove like 45 minutes later. And he's like, hey, do you want to go for a run? And it's like midnight. And I'm like,
wow.
Bro,
That's hardcore.
I don't feel good. I just flew 6 hours here. I moved away from my home and my family, and you're asking me if I want to go on a run at midnight?
Oh,
and he's just like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's the problem?
And then like years later, we are like best friends at school, and like he ended up being a head coach of a 7th grade basketball team, and he brought me on to be the assistant coach. And we coached 7th grade basketball together.
I remember you told me you coached. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And he loved basketball. He was a great runner. He's now like a coach in the communities, coached like the high school there in Forest Grove.
Oh, cool.
He does ultra marathons. I went to see him do his first marathon, 26.2 miles on Mount Hood. So it was like a hilly. No one else does this.
Yeah.
Shout out Coach Mac. Adrian Shipley does that.
Yeah.
So he picked me up, and he actually came out here to Albuquerque with me when I first moved here.
Oh, cool.
Me and him drove from Oregon, Forest Grove, here in 2012. So
cool.
he became like a really, really close friend of mine. So
nice.
That was how I got to Pacific.
Cool. So Pacific University. What was your major in? This is your bachelor years, right? Yeah. Yeah. So you're getting your bachelor's. What did you major in over there?
I was really into economics, and so I got my major was in economics.
Okay.
And I was really into economics in high school. I had a really sweet economics class my senior year, taught by Miss Fale. Miss Fale was awesome. She'd bring her kids in, and she was just like really, really hard and strict. And I learned a lot from her about life and the kind of like economics that we experience through life.
Yeah.
And so going into Pacific, I was like, oh, like, I'm into economics. And there was an economics department, a couple professors, pretty small though. The classes were like really, really small. It was a really kind of tiny liberal arts school. So the more we progressed through the curriculum over the years, the smaller the classes, like, so we had maybe like 5 people my senior year get a major in economics to finish their BA.
How big is the university?
Oh, I can't say now, but when we were there, 1/3 of the undergrad population was from Hawaii. So like tons of folks from Native Hawaiian. I had like 12 kids from my high school class go to Pacific with me.
Oh, okay.
And then there were just like 100 people from Hawaii every year. So there's just like, it's a small school, but there's lots of like kids from Hawaii.
Okay.
So I would say maybe like 1,500. It's a
pretty small university.
When I was there, it was like maybe 2 at the most. And I just ran into a classmate of mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Lindsay Costley, who was into kind of like student government affairs at Pacific that I kind of also was involved in. And there they just moved with their wife to Albuquerque like 6 months ago, and Lindsay has a job at Apple. So I saw Lindsay yesterday, and we're like, oh my God, it's not every day we see classmates from Pacific out in the real world away from Oregon or Hawaii, because there's just not a lot of us. So it was kind of cool.
Nice. So, Pacific University. You got your bachelor's from Pacific?
Bachelor's from Pacific.
And then what were your next steps after? What were your life choices?
Yeah, I was really not sure what I wanted to do next. I knew that I wanted to stay involved with speech and debate because I was good at it. And I started coaching speech and debate at Pacific immediately after. And the way that I could supplement the like low wage of coaching from coaching at Pacific was I also wanted to get a master's degree. So I applied my senior year to master's programs all over in Oregon, in California. And I even applied to a master's program in Illinois. So I ended up staying in Oregon, went to the University of Portland for my master's degree.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of it had to do with my drive to want to coach. I wanted to like stay involved in speech and debate. It's an interesting thing. It like pulls you in and you do all this like labor and work for it. And then when you're done, it still wants to keep you around and then not pay you a whole lot. So it's like a weirdly like self-perpetuating like industry, but it teaches you a lot of skills like we talked about before. So I was a master's student at the University of Portland, and then I was coaching speech and debate at Pacific, and I started to recruit some kids from my high school Kamehameha to come because we had scholarships. And so I was trying to like help Native Hawaiian students come to college if they wanted to.
Yeah, here's an opportunity. That's cool.
So I brought two when I was there, Michael Sproles and Matthew Yasuoka, these two Kamehameha students to Pacific, and they got scholarships and they competed and they fucking rocked it.
Yeah, they killed it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so when I was in school, it's cool because there's like a little bit of a genealogy. Me and my best friend, Josh Masagatani, shout out Josh, we were there for speech and debate, and we just like rocked the scene. And then when we ended, these two others, Michael and Matt, came and just continued it. So there was this like cool legacy of Native Hawaiian, Pacific competitors that were really good on our circuit.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you probably go to the university now and there's your pictures all lined up. Hopefully. If not, we should make a phone call. Nah, man, that's cool. So Portland, how long did you live in Portland? So
I lived in Forest Grove for the 4 years of my college undergrad experience, like on campus in dorms. And then the next year when I started my master's but was coaching, I moved to an apartment with some friends in Forest Grove.
Oh, okay.
So I could coach and not have to commute to work, but then I'd commute to school.
Okay.
And so the following year, my sixth year in Oregon, I moved to Portland.
Okay.
I moved like literally across the street from the University of Portland, which was really nice. It was like a sweet little house with a red door, and it's still there.
Oh, cool.
So Yara and I went to Oregon.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember.
And we like drove by, and I was like, Yara, that was my old house. And she's like, I don't care.
Gotta take a picture. No. That's funny.
So I lived in Portland for 1 year, and I lived in North Portland, which is very different than like in Portland. It's on the opposite side of the Willamette River that kind of like cuts through Portland. So downtown Portland is on the like southwest side of the Willamette River, right in that metro area. And then the University of Portland's on the like northeast side.
Okay.
And so I lived on that side of the river. And northeast Portland is really neglected. It's like not seen as like Portland. Portland kind of is this symbol of like white liberal hipster, avocado toast.
Avocado
shit.
toast, yeah.
And it it also is like this place that people think is really like rad, right? But there's a lot of racism there, and there's a lot of like wealth, and that's not talked about. And so on the other side of the river in Northeast Portland, there's a lot of poverty, but there's also a lot of perseverance. And so I found a lot of really cool stuff to take responsibility for being there and working with some different organizations that were trying to promote education in lower income Black neighborhoods in Northeast Portland. So I worked with the organization through my master's program called the Journey to Freedom Foundation. And it was run, and unfortunately no longer anymore, but it was run at the time by a guy named Karanja Cruz. And he came to the University of Portland and was like, hey, I need help. I'm like the only one employed in this organization, and I'm a nonprofit. I'm not making money, but I'm trying to like help educate our Black youth in the community in a city that doesn't care about them, about histories of slavery. So he developed this board game, and it was called The Journey to Freedom.
Oh, wow.
And you would play and kind of like go through this, board game where you would try to make your way to freedom as a Black slave, as an African person that had been enslaved by white slave owners in the United States. And along the way, you'd learn about different Black slaves that became free and emancipated themselves. And like Frederick Douglass, you'd learn about different events. You'd learn about different coalitions between Black slaves and other people.
All in a board game.
Wow. So we would do like workshop nights, and one workshop night, Raymond Felton came, who at the time was a Portland Trailblazer player for the basketball team. He now plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's still playing. Yeah, and I took a picture with him. Yeah. I was like, man, this is Portland. Everybody thinks it's the white dreadlock
coffee shop. Ride your bike,
roll up one pant sleeve.
I can't talk. I've never been to Portland. Shout out Portland. But, I have a TV. But I definitely wouldn't want, I need to go. I definitely need to go to Portland. But that's cool, man. So you're in Portland 1 year. And then what?
So I graduate and I applied for PhD programs. I applied only for 2. And
how long did it take you to get your master's?
2 years. It was like a really quick program.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, you're done with your master's?
Yep, done with my master's. And at the time, people are telling me that, like, don't stay being a speech and debate coach. Like, it will suck you in. You won't, your labor will not be valued, and you will not be compensated for it. It's hard hours, low wage, and you should get a PhD because at least you can continue your education that you want to pursue and the research and writing that you want to do. You can get it funded, and you can come out on the other end with a degree that will help to proliferate a better wage.
Okay.
And so I had really good advice from people, and then I was like, all right, I'll apply. I'll see what happens.
Okay.
And I only applied to 2 spots.
Yeah.
And this is a funny story. I applied to the University of Washington, which at the time, I was like, oh, if I get into the University of Washington, that's where I'm going. Seattle, baby. How ignorant.
Keep it Northwest. Yeah.
So the other place I applied was the University of New Mexico.
Okay.
And the reason why is because my master's advisor, Courtney Vale Fletcher, got her PhD in the communication and journalism department here, and then got a job at the University of Portland. So she's like, you should definitely continue this research and apply to the University of New Mexico. This is a really good department. I got my degree in communication, my master's, and she's like, look, apply to the PhD in communication at UNM.
Yeah.
So I applied to both. I didn't get into UW. Fuckers.
Yeah.
I got waitlisted at UNM.
Really?
Fuckers.
Yeah.
And eventually my name got bumped up and I got an offer for my PhD program at C&J at UNM.
Okay.
And so I was like, it's fully funded, you know, and at the time I was like, wow, this is great. Like, I don't have to pay for my education. Yeah, I can teach and get a stipend, and they'll give me health insurance. And granted, like, graduate students who are assistant, like, they do, like, research assistantships and teaching assistantships are incredibly underpaid and incredibly undervalued. May 1st, there's going to be a graduate assistant walkout at UNM, and I'm going to participate.
That's May Day too, isn't it?
It is.
May 1st,
yeah. International Workers' Day, I believe.
Cool. Yep. International Workers' Day.
You know, at the time I was like, wow, like $14,000 a year plus a tuition waiver and health insurance sounds pretty good. And I'll get to like write and kind of do the research that I want to do.
Yeah.
So then I drive out here with my buddy Adrian Shipley. And,
first time?
That was my
here?
first time in Burque. At the time, we were like, oh, is it the Q?
Yeah.
Do we call it the Q?
The Q. Oh, I can't believe that happened. But, man. So that's got to be what? 2-day drive? If you're driving all day, all night? Yeah.
We spent 2 days driving.
Okay.
We drove from Forest Grove to Salt Lake City. And stayed in this whack-ass Airbnb. It was a hostel for sure, but nobody told us.
Nobody, yeah, they just listed it as an apartment.
Yeah.
But at least you weren't there that long.
No, we literally stayed for like, 6 hours
and then
8
dipped.
hours. And then the next morning we drove out of Salt Lake City to Albuquerque, and it was raining. I remember it was like, it was, pouring and like thunder, lightning. And so me and my buddy Adrian are like, dude, we're hungry. So we go to, oh man, what is this spot called? This Mexican spot on San Mateo and like Zuni. It's like a chain.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Frederico's?
Frederico's, yeah.
Oh,
that's
man, that was my first meal here in Albuquerque.
That was your introduction, huh?
And honestly, it was like delicious.
Oh,
and
dude,
then,
yeah.
Like a year or two ago, I went to Frederico's and went through the drive-thru, and they charged me $117 for like a plate of food.
Wow.
And so I had to go back and be like, yo, my carne asada fries did not cost $117. And they kind of gave me the like runaround a little bit. I showed up the next morning, walked in with my receipt, and they're like, oh, no, I don't know what to do with this guy. I'm like, dude, give me my money back.
Yeah. Refund.
Yeah, but, bless their hearts. Like,
yeah.
I love their carne asada fries.
Dude,
yeah.
Some of the best. I haven't been there in a long time, actually, man.
Yeah.
I have to go revisit. I hope they don't charge me $170 though. Like the ramen spot. Remember the ramen spot? $3,000.
No, what was that?
I went to O Ramen. Shout out O Ramen. Bomb spot. Love your food.
Really good food.
They took care of me, but went there for dinner. The next morning, I went to Walmart to get my fishing license because my dad and I were going to go fishing a few days later. So I'm getting my license, and the lady's like, dude, your card's not being accepted. It's declined. I'm like, can you run it again just one more time? No, it's declined. So I called the bank. I'm in Walmart. It's like 7:30 in the morning. I call Nusenda. Like, hey, my card's being declined at Walmart. They're like, all right, cool. Let's take a look, see what happened. I go, did you eat at a place called O Ramen last night? Yes, I did. Well, they charged you $3,000. Did you have a $3,000 meal? I go, yeah, that's what I do, on a regular basis. No, I didn't have a $3,000 meal. They go, and what do I need to do to fix this? Well, you need to go to the restaurant. You need to talk to whoever, tell them what happened. So I go to O Ramen, and they're not even open yet. They're like pulling up the blinds, wiping the tables, and I'm there at the door. And the waiter comes to the door. Can I help you? Say, yeah, I need to speak to the owner or the manager.
Yeah.
What for? I'm like, well, you guys charged me $3,000 last night. And the waiter's eyes get really big, and he goes, oh, it's you. So, yeah, it's me. And he told me, the owner isn't here right now, but he knows your situation. Here's his number. He wants you to call him. Called him. Real cool cat. I forget his name. Call him. He says, man, I'm sorry. it was a mistake by the waiter last night, just punched in the wrong numbers. Your refund is on its way. I've already talked to my bank. And I said, okay, cool. And he goes, yeah, it should take, another 24 hours. You'll have your money. It took a week for me to get my money back. But shout out to O Ramen. I ate free there, I think, 5 times that week. Yeah. And he kept telling me, the owner, come through, have dinner. Everything's on me. Don't worry about tipping. Don't worry, take a bottle of sake. Whatever bottle you want. Yeah.
So you took sake?
Yeah. I think I got 2 bottles. But they treated me well. They even gave me a $50 gift card after that.
Wow.
Yeah. Dude,
that's really nice.
Yeah,
that's really good.
But man, that initial $3,000.
Well, I mean, and that's okay. So $3,000 is like literally like how many more times than $117? Like $3,000 is like, not everybody has $3,000. Not everybody has a credit card that can hold $3,000 in credit. Like, you better do that. If y'all fuck up, make that shit right.
It was a rough week. I had to borrow $20 from my mom. Mom, I'm gonna borrow $20. And the bank was calling me, hey, we're gonna end your account if you don't put this, make it right. I said, my situation. The money's coming. Just okay. You better make it quick. I better make it quick. It's not my anyway. It was definitely interesting. But so Frederico's was your initiation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then where did you live? Did you know where you were going to live when you came?
Dude, I knew exactly where I was going to live. I was going to live in Nob Hill. At the time, all these C&J grad students were talking to me, and I was like, oh, where should I live? And they're like, oh, Nob Hill's cool. Ito's cool.
Ito.
Don't live in the South Valley. Don't live, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, so like Nob Hill's cool. Downtown's cool. So I go on Craigslist, and I'm looking at Nob Hill and downtown. And eventually I'm like, okay, Nob Hill seems closer to UNM. I knew I was going to have a car, but I didn't want to drive to school. I wanted to like walk or bike. So I wanted to live close. So I found this spot that had like a spiral staircase, and it was like a 1-bedroom loft. And I was like, oh, this is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And I wanted to live alone because I had just lived with roommates, and I was like, dude, this guy would always eat my frozen pizza. And brutal. I literally wrote a poem about this dude always eating my frozen pizza. And I used to love frozen pizza, and I was so heartbroken. Anyway, so I moved into Nob, where I found a spot on Craigslist, got it set up from afar, and drove out here with Adrian, and we moved in that night to this spot.
Oh, cool. And
it was like an apartment complex that was pretty cool. I liked it. It was like a good first spot to land. And it was on Zia by Far East Fusion and Caps Diner.
Yep.
On Central.
Yep.
And so when I rolled up, I was like, this isn't Nob Hill, is it? And they're like, this is Nob Hill East.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is some bullshit.
Yeah. You liars. Yeah.
And then the same people that were like, oh, you should live in Nob Hill, right? They come over and they're like, oh, dude, I don't feel safe here. And I was like, get the fuck out.
Yeah. Nob Hill East. Yeah. I've heard it all, man. Yeah, that's... So you get to your spot. Did you end up staying there? You ended up living there?
I lived there for 1 full year. And
cool.
And I enjoyed it. I thought that that area of... what people call the war zone or the international district was dope. I thought it was super dope. I would just ride my bike on Copper to campus, and it was
Copper,
downhill.
Yeah, turns into campus. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
the bike up was really brutal because it was uphill, but lots of good food. Actually, that's Caps. Caps Diner right there on Central in like Alvarado was where I fell in love with the red and green.
Yep.
So I lived there for a year, and then I moved closer to campus. And I was wanting to save money, so I moved in with a friend.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So 2012, you get here. What was your initial thought of Burque when you were your first 2 weeks here? Were you like, oh man, what did I get myself into? Or did you just embrace the city, or was there some inner turmoil?
Oh, it was complicated for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I was excited to be starting a PhD. You know, probably at the time I thought I was way too hot shit for that. But you know, the people and the place and the work that goes on here really humbled me and made me appreciate my opportunity to be responsible to the community here.
Yeah.
In different ways, not just on UNM too.
Yeah.
So my initial reaction was that it was just really like dry and there wasn't a lot of like greenery.
Yeah.
That was my initial reaction, in all honesty. And I remember the summer before I moved here, I went to Boulder, Colorado for a wedding. I was in my buddy's wedding, who was a runner at Pacific, and he got married that summer, and we were in Boulder. And he had a family friend who is from Albuquerque. And it's like, oh, so at the wedding I meet her, and she's like, oh, my son works at the Frontier restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you should go to the Frontier restaurant. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Fuck that name, but, you know, what should I expect? And she's like, okay, you should expect that it's going to be really brown. And I was like, whoa, that is so racist. Do you not see my skin color right now? Do you not know who I am? I know this wedding is full of white people.
Yeah.
And she's like, I just mean like the environment.
The scenery. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I mean, you got to watch how you say that.
Hell yeah.
You could have said the scenery is going to be really,
yeah. Exactly.
Jeez. So did you go to Frontier? Your first,
It wasn't my, yes, John, I went to Frontier.
Yeah. Your first couple of weeks or took some time?
Yeah, I think I did. I think we did like an orientation the week before
Always.
School started, and it was on campus. And C&J is like relatively close.
Oh yeah. I mean, even I had so many classes or introductions or study groups or whatever at Frontier. And actually I got really tired of it. But I lived near campus too. I lived on Columbia and Silver in the varsity apartments.
Okay.
And so I was at Frontier and Brickyard all the time.
Yeah.
Whether I did my writing at Brickyard because I like drinking and writing at the same time. But breakfast I'd stop in at Frontier, and I actually got really tired of the food, like real quick, which is normal. You're going to go to a place all the time. It's going to get tiring. But people, family members, friends, whenever they fly in, they're like, oh, we got to go to Frontier. And I'm like, no, we're not going to Frontier.
Yeah. You
should definitely go, but that's not the first place we're going. There's other places that are definitely way better, it's not packed, it's not crowded, you know what I mean? We'll try Frontier, but it's not the first place you should go. But,
yeah.
So, yeah, for sure. So, when did you start your poetry slam career? Was that in Portland or was that here in Albuquerque?
So, I would say I started my slam career in Albuquerque.
Okay.
I'm an ABQ Slams poet till I die. Etched in the walls of Winnings Coffee that will forever
rest in peace.
Rest
Winnings,
in power
man.
with the slam scene.
Some of the best breakfast burritos. That red chili, man, it was so good. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
And if you can get there today or tomorrow, they're closing tomorrow, April 20th. It's their last day as far as I know. So if you're a fan of Winning or if you've never been, Go today or tomorrow. I've been there a few times this week, and it is bustling as usual, but it is also very, very sad and morose.
It was I'd get a green chili bagel with butter and a coffee to go, and that was my go-to. If I had time, I'd get a breakfast burrito.
Yeah.
Or even when they'd have pozole or green chili stew, oh man, it was always really good.
And that was the first place I did slam.
Okay.
So before I had done open mics, and I was a kind of founding member of a Pacific Slam group on campus when I was coaching speech and debate. But when I moved to Albuquerque, I was like, oh, I'm going to start slamming, doing the competitive kind of slam poetry scene here. And I knew it was a really amazing city for slam poetry. In 2005, Albuquerque Slams won the National Poetry Slam.
Yeah.
And that team was badass.
Yeah.
Shout out Hakeem Bellamy.
Yep.
Shout out Carlos Contreras.
Yep.
Two guys that are really mixing up the city.
Yeah.
I think more so than just the regime change with Mayor Keller. No offense to Mayor Keller. I think he's doing really good work as far as a mayor can do, but Hakeem Bellamy and Carlos Contreras, in my mind, they're the mayors of Albuquerque.
Yeah, for sure. I've often thought that, but I've never said it. So thank you for saying it.
They're the mayors of Albuquerque.
Yeah. They are the mayors of Albuquerque. Yes.
So yeah, winning was like the spot, man. It was like I met Damian Flores.
Yep.
I met
Damian's cool cat.
Aaron Cuffey, Jazz Cuffey, Jessica Helen Lopez, through Slam. And so when I first moved to Albuquerque, I kind of had this idea that I wanted to compete, and it turned out to be a really good place and site for me to just get to know folks and to also work with folks on poetry. So I would volunteer and do, after getting like qualified on the Albuquerque Slam poetry team to compete in the National Poetry Slam, we would like run different poetry workshops around town, like constantly going to different like coffee shops to perform, and people would have us do performances all over NHCC, stuff like that. And so it was really fun to get involved in the community through slam poetry in that first year. And I spent like a ton of time performing and also practicing and just like hanging out with people. And it was a really generative first year.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Hey, I think this is a good time for a refill. If you'd like a refill of beer.
I like to work and drink.
Let's. I'm gonna hit pause real quick, and we're back. Got the refill, and we're ready to go. So first year, UNM, you're in Albuquerque. You got your poetry slam career going tough. So what was that first year like for you? Was it man, I want to go home, or did you really embrace the community at that point?
I was trying to be myself here in Albuquerque and really get involved on the ground. And so I didn't go home too frequently that year to Hawaii. I might have gone home for Christmas, but I did not really go home that summer. And the reason why was because we had to practice like literally every day for the National Poetry Slam. That was going to happen in like July or June, and it was in Cambridge,
Massachusetts.
Yeah. Super white.
Oh man. I've heard horror stories. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. It was like a very strange feeling and I had never been to Massachusetts before, but it was a very strange feeling to be around these like Ivy League kind of people, like people of Harvard, right? I think Harvard is in Cambridge.
Yes.
And we performed on campus like one time, and it was a just culture shock to be like not necessarily in Cambridge or like in Boston per se, but to be close to this center of like educational power that also is like about economic power and like about racial power too, right? So that summer we had to practice like literally every day, and I lived on like Stanford and Silver too,
student
like
ghetto.
around there.
Yeah, man.
I lived in this apartment that had a little like hobbit hole right on Stanford, and I'd walk to like Winning to practice. I'd walk to our coach Aaron Cuffey's house. So poetry like took over my life that summer.
Cool.
We had to represent Burque, and didn't go home, went to Cambridge. We made it to semifinals, which was pretty cool. So we qualified for, like, we were the top 20 slam teams that year out of like almost 100. And came back, school started, and kind of transitioned into thinking about my own writing for research more, and trying to combine like what I learned in poetry with what I was trying to do with my PhD.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
How often would you guys practice?
I'd say we practice like almost every day.
Yeah, like 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours.
It would depend. Usually it'd be like It depends on like what kind of practice it was.
Okay.
Like if we're running lines,
Yeah.
if we're just doing a little showcase, if we're focusing on group poems or individual poems, it really depended. And that was hard. It was hard to, I'd never written poetry with other people before.
Yeah.
And so everybody has different styles. Like the
Definitely.
words you choose are different. The way you put them together is different. The way that you like say them is different. And it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Especially together. Like our coach, Aaron Cuffey, had to wrangle us, you know? We all didn't always get along, but we certainly did to some degree. And so sometimes practices could be like a couple hours. Sometimes they could be like 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, I don't think people really know. Like, people are, oh, John's a rapper. He's a rapper. You know, and it's just like this, how do I say? It's like it's almost romanticized, like, John's a rapper. Oh, rapper us right now, John. Like, can you rap about this table? And it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And they don't know how we sit down and come up with concepts or build with each other or why we wrote this certain song or even the music aspect. Like, yo, I make beats too, and like I record over it, and there's this whole production behind it that needs to happen before a song is released. It's not like I record on a tape recorder and like it's done. You know, there's a lot of actions behind the music, and people don't, you know, they don't understand that. So it's cool to hear, you know, other artists, I just want to hear, you know, how long do you practice, or what do you do to rehearse, or what's your recording, you know, technique, you know, what do you do, you know? So it's cool to hear, you know, yeah, sometimes it's 2 hours, which sounds like a good day, or sometimes it's 8 hours where everybody's just kind of like, you know,
yeah. And I
Battle Royale.
I had to hand it to our coach Cuffey, because he would like typically not let us like just bounce if we weren't having a good day.
Yeah.
Or if we weren't getting along, or if a poem wasn't finished. You know, he once we got into the practicing of performance phase after the writing phase, like the first part of the summer was like just write. Like I need like poems. Like we need like 50 poems or something.
Yeah.
Duets, individual triples, you know, 4 people poems.
Nice.
And then once we got into the second stage, which was like practicing, you know, actually performing the poems, he didn't fuck around. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
That pushed me to really think about the mode of performing slam poetry, and that mode is different than just performing poetry, as it's different than hip hop or rap. And I got to really like play in the differences and similarities, and really like kind of like on a meta level think about, you know, what am I doing? And the approach for what am I doing? And so I appreciated how kind of like cerebral he was. He's a guy that like you see him perform a poem and you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. And then he'll like disappear and not perform for years. Yeah. And he's meticulous, right? Like, and so he's not so concerned about the product necessarily. I mean, he is, because he wants a poem to like, as most slam poets do, you want to score high. You want to like beat your competitors. You want to win. But I think he was more meticulous over the practice and the labor, because he could see that if you put in the work, you know, you'd be fine on stage. Yeah.
That's what's up. Hard work pays off. Yeah. So, okay, first year, you get introduced to Albuquerque, UNM. This is the start of your PhD, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then, so you kind of took a break from slam poetry, right?
That's correct.
You started focusing on what your research and your writing wanted to be. And can you tell us, or can you tell me, not like we're in a crowd here or anything, what was your, how did you know what you wanted to research and write? Like, what was the inspiration?
That's a heavy question.
Okay.
But I'm glad you asked it.
Okay.
My inspiration for my dissertation research really came from my master's thesis research and a process of self-discovery, and also reckoning with my relationship to Hawaii itself and who I am. So what that means is when I was doing my master's, I was like, whoa, what am I going to write a thesis about? Like, what do I have to say about whatever? And my thesis advisor, Courtney Vale Fletcher, who got her PhD here, was like, maybe don't think about like computer-mediated communication as a topic for your thesis, which is something I was interested in.
Okay.
But maybe think about all the stuff you talk to me about and you talk to your classmates about related to like Hawaiian history and like Hawaiian politics, Hawaiian identity. So I wrote my master's thesis and kind of started to dig into my own family's genealogy of resistance to colonialism. My great-great-grandfather, C.B. Maile, Charles, was an anti-annexationist. So he, along with many other Hawaiians, resisted the U.S.-led effort to annex the Hawaiian Islands. And his kind of work to protest and oppose that process and colonialism writ large in Hawaii demonstrates the kind of lack of consent that Hawaiians have for any form of U.S. democracy, inclusion, right? Like Hawaiians have never acquiesced to being included into the United States.
Okay.
So my great-great-grandmother, his partner, wrote songs and poetry about revolutionary Hawaiians who took up arms against the illegal occupying government. And together, along with many, many other Kanaka Maoli or Native Hawaiians, really, really demonstrated to our people throughout time and space, whether it's me here in Albuquerque or people back home in this contemporary moment, that we're a particular collective of people that have a particular relationship to the United States, but also to the land in Hawaii. And so those are all things that really inspired me to write about Hawaiian politics. And I wrote my master's thesis about how identity is negotiated between Native Hawaiians and settlers to Hawaii that claim forms of Hawaiian indigeneity by virtue of living there.
Okay.
And I studied those identity negotiations in Oregon and the way that students who move to Hawaii away from either their kulaivi, their like ancestral homeland, or this place that they've come to identify and feel belonging to, how they like thought about what it meant to be Native Hawaiian or someone who settled in Hawaii and then moving to the continent.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was like, I'm much more interested in some other stuff related, but to me, I thought that Hawaiian sovereignty was a really big topic that had a lot of baggage, but also like importance, because it's exactly what my great-great-grandparents fought for in the late, 1800s, 19th century, and what others' ancestors fought for.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write about Hawaiian sovereignty in history, law, and activism.
Yeah.
And so that's what I got into with my dissertation. And I kind of transitioned, like specifically with the help of American studies, away from what I was learning to do in C&J in communication, which was more about like identity stuff. And I wanted to really dig into like history, law, and activism.
Cool.
And American studies helped me to do that.
Yeah. That's what's up, man. So how long of a process was it from beginning to end? Because you don't enter a PhD program and you don't just take off writing. There's other stuff involved. So what was that other stuff that was involved before you began even writing your dissertation?
The first step was coursework, taking classes.
Yeah.
In my case, it was coursework and teaching. Those were the two big components of the first step. So taking graduate seminars that had master's students and PhD students from not just the department that I was in, but other departments. So, for instance, I took a class in American Studies, when I was a C&J PhD student, and then it was like, oh,
Yeah. That's where you crossed over.
that
Yeah.
is exactly
That
where I
was the
crossed over.
boom. Nice.
Shout out to Amy Branzel, who taught that class and then generously worked with me on my dissertation.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was the first step, was taking classes. We'd read like, a bunch of articles and books, and usually write like a term paper. And some of those term papers ended up being, for me at least, part of what my dissertation was about.
Okay.
And so I always had this idea that when I'd write something in a class, I'd want to use it for the dissertation eventually,
Yeah.
so that I could collate and organize in my mind what the dissertation would end up being, and that I'd have stuff written that I could incorporate. So it wouldn't just be like something completely new. It was a process of thinking through the coursework stage what I wanted to eventually finish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever catch any backlash on what you wanted to write?
Oh,
Was
yeah.
anybody ever just like, no, you shouldn't do that. You should do this.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I'm sure it happened, but how much backlash did you catch?
The primary backlash that I got, which was a element of why I switched departments, was that folks in my first department thought I was too narrow in my research because I only wrote about Hawaii.
And nothing else. Like, how can you include this? How can you include that?
And so that was like the primary critique, and it was really short-sighted because I didn't just write about Hawaii. Nobody just writes about anything, right?
Okay,
there's like relations
Yeah.
in the topic that you write about that are crossed over with other topics, right? So, I wrote about race, gender, and sexuality in relation to Hawaiian politics.
Yeah.
At the time specifically, and even with that, some folks were like, well, like, you're still just writing about Hawaii. And,
Yeah.
like, what else? I'm like, I can't not write about Hawaii because I'm Hawaiian.
Yeah. This is where I'm from,
Yeah, and I think some people had this weird, like, cognitive dissonance and, difficulty kind of coming to terms with the fact that I wanted to write about what's important for my people and for my community and for the place that I'm genealogically connected to.
Yeah.
And to some extent, it like projected maybe insecurity over where they even like felt they come from, where they're at, their relationship to their community. And so I was like really dissuaded by those critiques, because I was like, look, I'm trying to do something in relation to what other folks are doing. And that's the whole process and idea, is like producing knowledge that is in relation to other forms of knowledge. Right?
Yeah.
And folks in my first department kind of weren't on the same page with me, at the least. And in some cases lashed out about the intensity of my research, because it dealt with material consequences, right? Like material things happening, policies that the federal government was implementing to harm, the Lahui, our people and nation.
Yeah.
And then I went to American studies, and folks were like, oh yeah, no, this is great. Yeah. Other people are doing this kind of work too. And we should all talk over beer.
Nice. One of the best pieces of advice I got from a mentor, emceeing, rapping, I had written this 16-bar verse, and it dealt with some very serious, very serious issues, and I said some very serious things. And I was like, man, I don't know if I should record this, and I don't know if it should be released. And he told me, he said, your work as an artist should be dangerous. Not only should it inspire, and not only should it bring your community together, but other people should look at it and be like, oh my God, you know what I mean? So I've seen, within the industry, within the hip hop community, people they write their fun songs, which is cool. Everybody likes to have fun, but also, they've gone through experiences where they don't share their experiences. They kind of just sugarcoat everything, and it's not, as I see it, dangerous. Like, you need to say something more with what you're doing. And I'm glad you followed your heart and you followed your inspiration, and you decided to change to a different program so that you were supported and that you were able to write and research what you wanted to do. So props.
Thanks.
That's what's up, man. So how many years did it take for you to finally finish beginning to end? What was the time length?
So
Length of time.
I've been on the PhD journey for 7 years.
Wow.
So it'll have taken me 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
I moved from one department to another, which added on a little bit of time. So I had to take more courses once I moved to American Studies to fulfill their requirements.
Mm-hmm.
But the dissertation itself is a little bit more complicated to say like how long it took, because I wrote things for it like early on that obviously I edited and revised and made better or whatever, but the pure time that I had in the second stage of like dissertating was a year and a half.
Okay.
Because after coursework, I had to take a comprehensive exam. So I studied, read like 150 books and articles.
I remember this.
Yeah.
I remember that time in your life, yeah.
Yeah, I'd show up to the grain station like at noon and like eat a bratwurst and have some like beer and then just read for hours until it was dark, and then people would come and talk shit to me and I would show them that they were incorrect.
Yes. I remember those moments. Big highlights in my life where I got to witness such moments. Yes. I needed those moments of inspiration.
Yeah, so after the comprehensive exam I took the exam in like September, and then I had a year. So I took the comprehensive exam in September, and then in December the same year did my prospectus, which was a proposal for the dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to prepare for that in one semester, and then after that passed, I had a year and a half till now. So technically 2 years of dissertating.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So they make sure, oh, you want a PhD, huh? Well, we're going to make you work for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Such is life.
Yeah.
One thing about your dissertation, I haven't read your dissertation, and I'm going to, yes. But I know we've talked about it a lot, and I've seen it in your past work and in articles that you've written, is about the 30-meter telescope. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
TMT.
Yep.
I know it as TMT, 30-meter telescope. And one thing in your writing, the article that you had wrote, it says, Hawaiian people need this. You need this. The world needs it. And it resonated with me just because living on military bases throughout the world, I'm sure that was probably said, you need this, like Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
You need this. Yeah. Wow, I just totally lost my train of thought. But how is the TMT, how has that really affected the population on the island?
It's affected everybody in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And in different ways, for sure. But from a kind of environmental, legal perspective, it's affected everyone on the Big Island, Hawaii Island, which is where Mauna Kea is, our mountain that the 30-meter telescope is trying to be built on. And so it's affected folks in that perspective because of the kind of pollution that it brings.
Yeah.
The kind of environmental impact, the kind of environmental degradation. Folks have talked a lot about how the construction and development itself would harm the ecosystem in terms of the way that water proliferates on Hawaii Island.
Mm-hmm.
And also different kinds of insects and species of animals that will be implicated because of the actual construction. I mean, it's the 30-meter telescope. It's a gigantic project. It has an 8-acre construction impact on the environment which it could be built. And then after it's built, it's like a 5-acre thing. Mm-hmm. So it will ultimately impact the environment. And a lot of folks have used environmental impact statements that have been done to assess the possible damage of the development to suggest in courts, that there will be an adverse, harmful effect because of the construction.
Yeah.
Not just to our particular, like the way that Native Hawaiians hold in reverence and the storied place Mauna Uahikea, but for everybody that lives on Hawaii Island. And as a smaller example, it creates a different view from basically everywhere you are, especially on the like northeast and like south side of the island, because it will be impacted by a gigantic 30-meter telescope.
Yeah.
So it's not just like pollution in the sense of, harming the environment on the ground, but also kind of like a impact of the sky. And for us, that area, which is at 14,000 feet in elevation, is what we call like it's the realm in which certain deities exist for Native Hawaiians. And it's a place that is not really for people to be. And so those arguments have also been incorporated in courts to suggest that the 30-meter telescope would be harmful to everyone and also specifically to Native Hawaiians who have had our state-recognized traditional and customary cultural practices and rights trampled on.
And what I find really cool is that there was a construction date set, right, in the past, and the people of Hawaii said, no, we're going to get together and we're going to block this construction. And construction didn't happen. Like, no truck made it up the mountain, right? No materials, nothing. And the project, well, they're still planning on it, right? But because of that awareness of the people and the action of the people, it caused them to just not start building that day. And that's really, that's really inspiring. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I, for one, have felt incredible inspiration from the Kia'i, the protectors and guardians of Mauna Uahikea, this mountain, and the way they have steadfastly stood on that mountain to stop construction from happening.
Yeah.
And done it in a way that has resonated with other movements of indigenous protectors of life, land, and sacred places, like at the Standing Rock Sioux Nation, where water protectors had and continue to stand against the Dakota Access Pipeline, but also other projects that attempt to pollute water and land and harm, specifically indigenous people, but also non-indigenous people too.
Yeah.
The earth itself and thus people. And so I've gotten, I'm honored and privileged to have learned from folks that have stood on the mountain, and folks that have talked to me about it. And so I've tried in every step of the process to think about what they've told me and what they've told others in the research that I'm doing, and to take cues from them.
Yeah. That's what's up. Yeah, it just goes to show Dead Prez. I don't know if you're familiar. There's a hip hop group, Dead Prez, and man, Marcel's gonna kill me. One of their albums, they have a quote from another revolutionary, and it said the quote is, "Together the ants will defeat the elephant."
I like that.
Yeah, so it just goes to show, like, when people come together, you can change. You can change some shit. Like, a good example, the teachers in the past, year and a half.
Yeah.
They're saying, you know what? No more. We're not going to teach anymore.
Yeah.
And the argument has been given to me that, well, you're not teaching kids. You're walking out on the kids. It's like, no, we're doing this to make their situation better as well. Is there going to be some sacrifice involved? Yeah, of course there's going to be some sacrifice involved. But, what has ever changed by writing your local congressman? Nothing. It's when people get in the street and start disrupting some shit. So,
and I that's a great point, and I think it's like super interesting with like union organizing and labor movements. With teacher striking, like we brought up, or with indigenous and non-indigenous peoples coalescing together to protect Earth, the environment, Hawaiian sacred places. And here in New Mexico, there's been a really interesting thing that happened, which I think is like really, really fascinating in relation to what you just brought up, which is like, it's not calling your congressman that actually initiates and creates pressure for changes, but it's the people on the ground making sacrifices and laboring over so much for justice, freedom, and liberation. So New Mexico's now passed Indigenous Peoples Day into law to replace Columbus Day.
Yeah.
And, thankfully, Michelle Lujan Grisham signed those bills and authorized this into state law. But years ago, people even before me wanted to get rid of Columbus Day here in New Mexico. And then once I got to UNM and started working with the Red Nation, which is an indigenous-led coalition for liberation against capitalism and colonialism and its forms of violence, we started a campaign at the University of New Mexico and in Albuquerque to get rid of Columbus Day. And it was a grueling campaign, and we received so much criticism and incurred like racism in the process, and had to continually show up to public forums where folks were defending Columbus or defending, discoverers of land that somehow just ended up on places that were uninhabited, which we know is not true.
Yeah.
And, we really, along with other folks, organized to influence the legislation that now is law, which no one talked about when Michelle Lujan Grisham signed this into law.
Yeah.
And so I like what you said earlier, where it's like, it's not about like...
Yeah, I think a lot of people gave, Michelle Lujan Grisham a lot of props for, oh, she signed the bill, But yeah, the backbone of the work wasn't mentioned. And it took people marching. It took, like you said, the forums. It took the actions in Santa Fe and Albuquerque and elsewhere in New Mexico for that bill to finally be signed.
Yeah.
It's like the civil rights movement. Oh, so-and-so signed a piece of paper. Yeah, but not until, children were being arrested and attacked by dogs, that movement in the streets, the boycotts, all that different stuff happened. That's what took the politician to sign that piece of paper. And the fight still continues. And those fights in the street still continue. And that's what we need to do in order to in my opinion, to keep this the positive ball rolling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that needs to happen. But yeah, it's not a politician signing a piece of paper. There's a lot of stuff behind that. And like you said, it wasn't acknowledged. So thank you. And thanks to all the other people in not just New Mexico, but around the world who start these movements to make real change. Yes, sir. So, dissertation, you feel good?
Feel good.
You defended your dissertation, feel good. What are your next steps?
My next step is a big step. And I'm still trying to sit in the moment of finishing the dissertation
Gotcha.
feeling good about completing this like really arduous process of the PhD. But I am happy to say that my next step is taking on an assistant professor position.
Wow.
At the University of Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a position of Indigenous politics in the Department of Political Science. I've been waiting to announce it and feel pretty comfortable about announcing it now because this is the next step for me.
Nice.
And I'm done with the dissertation, done with the PhD, and now can kind of like finally figure out what to do next and what that process will look and feel like to be kind of like in the shoes of a position that can support the real work that I want to do. Because to me, I see academia as a means. It's not an end.
Yeah.
It's a way to support the work on the ground that I want to do. And so in a lot of ways, I'm over the moon about taking a position, and it's a really amazing university. It's a top tier research school in Canada, and the department is a top tier political science department, and they've hired me to do really important work on Indigenous politics, and they have valued my work and that it can contribute to the field of Indigenous studies and political science.
Nice.
So I'm excited to be teaching face-to-face next year instead of teaching online like I have been for the past 2-3 years here at UNM.
Oh, man. You did. Yeah, you went through some hard work, man.
But that's the next step for me is becoming a professor, which, shout out to my mom.
Nice.
Never quite
man.
thought as a kid this would be what happens in my life, because as a kid, I didn't like to read, didn't like to write.
Who did? I want to meet those kids.
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
But yeah, man, it was a long journey, man, that thankfully we had positive role models to help us along the way.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Toronto, huh?
Toronto.
That's near Green Bay. Well, it's closer to Green Bay than we are, right?
From what I understand,
yeah. And you're closer to Pittsburgh.
I'll be closer to Pittsburgh. That's correct. I've definitely thought about the possibility of going to Steelers games.
Yeah. You're pretty much a coach at this point.
I am.
I
Mike
think so.
Tomlin.
you are. How did you become a Steelers fan?
I've
heard the story, but How did you become a Steelers fan, man?
I've been thinking a lot about my relationship with sports recently.
Okay.
This is fun. I became a Steelers fan because of a particular player who, as a kid, young kid, I watched play football on TV because my dad was a big sports fan. He encouraged me to play basketball, to play baseball. He really got me into sports, and it was a way for he and I to relate to one another.
Nice.
I think that he communicates well with sports as a kind of relational language, and so he and I bonded a lot as people over sports. Then I played sports, not really football though.
Yeah,
he didn't want me to get hit, but
getting hit sucks, dude. It sucks so bad.
I remember watching the Steelers play probably when Cordell Stewart had just become a Steeler. And he was a quarterback primarily at the University of Colorado University.
Yes. But he was a runner too, right? I remember watching him play. He was fun to watch.
He was a quarterback, I think a wide receiver and a punter.
Oh.
So they called him the Slash. And I remember watching him play in his first year as a Steeler in this one-bedroom house that me and my family lived in, and the TV in the bedroom, me and my dad were watching the Slash play, and I was like, this guy is amazing. He plays 3 different positions, and what some argue is the most important position of quarterback, and then maybe what some could argue is the least important, the punter.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so cool, and so I started following the Steelers because of Cordell Stewart, and a lot of Steelers fans don't even know who that is.
No, they don't, dude. The bandwagoners, they know the last couple of years,
And so ever since that point in my life until probably when I was maybe 13 or 14, I had collected Cordell Stewart trading cards, and I'd even send them to him
to get them signed.
Yeah. And one time, one of them was signed, but it definitely was a stamp.
Oh.
So, Cordell, if you're listening to this, I may forgive, but I don't forget.
Don't forget, man, yeah. Wouldn't it be cool, though, if it was his stamp, he stamped it? He was like, man, I get millions of these cards every week. I'm just going to make a stamp. And there's an assembly line. Boom, 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 boom. But, yeah, I did the same thing. I sent him, you're a Packer fan? Who's your favorite receiver? And I'm like, Sterling Sharp. And they're like, who? Sterling Sharp, arguably one of the best receivers in NFL history, did it without gloves. But whatever. But, yeah, man, I'd send cards in. My brother and I would send in posters, footballs, whatever. And we never got a response. So at least you got a response.
So your footballs never came back?
No, dude. Well, I make it sound like we sent millions of them. We maybe sent 1 or 2. But, yeah, Never got a response, but that's a cool story, man. Cordell Stewart, yeah. Who's the coach during Cordell's time? It was the mustache guy.
Was it Coward?
Bill
Yeah.
Cowher. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, then he won the Super Bowl with them, not with Cordell, but he won a Super Bowl, and then he retired, and that's when Tomlin came in, right?
Yeah, and then he won. Did he win?
2. I believe he won 2. Maybe Cowher won 2, and Tomlin won 1, and then you guys lost to the Packers.
I still remember watching that game in Forest Grove.
Oh man,
groaning as rightfully so. The Packers won, and
yeah, I watched that game with my brother and my aunt at my aunt's house. And my aunt, she was just sitting there, and my brother and I were just like chest bumping, like spilling beer everywhere. Chips were everywhere, burritos, just like wow, like we were so happy, man. Even the next day, I went to UNM a little hungover. I wore my my Brett Favre jersey.
nice.
Yeah, as did many other people that day.
As one does.
One does. Well, Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, Ferguson jerseys, But that's cool, man.
So what do you think of the current climate in
Man,
the
Aaron,
Packers?
I think Aaron responded in a very responsible way, in a good way. He said, whenever my name is mentioned by these players, it's in a smear kind of way. Why do they keep talking about me? And then, of course, my coach and I sometimes it was a stressful relationship. What relationship isn't stressful? And especially if you want to win games, we're going to butt heads a few times. But to say, and he even responded to Jermarco Finley, he said, when did he think I was a bad leader? It couldn't have been when he broke his neck and I spent 2 hours with him in the hotel or in the hospital room, And then whenever their names are mentioned, it's an article about me. So when you want to talk about being petty, like how is this not being petty? And then a bunch of players, James Jones, John Kuhn, though just right off the top of the head, they came out and said, no, that's not how it was. We won games. We won a Super Bowl. We went to the playoffs, all these years. I think a lot of people, the Packers, they should be, what the Patriots are now. But it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
And, it gets to a point where a coach isn't providing the numbers that people want to see, so they fired him. And I hated to see McCarthy go. I thought he was a good coach. I thought it was just a bad year.
Yeah.
I'm sure the next year would have been a lot better. But, we got Matt LaFleur. We got some new offensive coordinators, some new people on defense. I was sad to see Clay Matthews go, which is going to be tough. He went to the Rams.
He's an LA boy.
That's gonna bite us in the ass, I think. But I think deep down there's a lot of people bitter that Aaron hasn't won more Super Bowls, and that's why these articles are coming out like, oh, he's the greatest, but he hasn't put up numbers like Tom Brady, which is, the guy's won Super Bowls, but they've also deflated footballs and got caught in stadiums taking pictures. So I've always said there's an asterisk by their Super Bowl wins, but cheating is cheating. You can't just deflate footballs, Tom Brady, and call it a day. You did something wrong, right? But let's see what happens this year. That's the cool thing about sports is there's always next year. So
I really liked what James Harrison, former Steelers and also former Patriots linebacker, said in relation to the issues in the Steelers organization that I think are figuring into what is happening with the Packers and probably what happens with all football teams and all organizations with large amounts of people and small amounts of people, is that everybody has their own reality.
Yeah.
And that their reality is their particular understanding of the way things work. And that reality is not uniform or universal to all the people in the organization. And so folks have different understandings of the same person.
Yeah.
And that's real. And that is like pretty much life in general.
Yeah.
And I loved when he said that because it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And while with the Steelers, that has taken place in the particular ways with, folks criticizing the organization and then wanting to leave, like Antonio Brown, or folks that wanted to be valued and ended up leaving, like Le'Veon Bell. Similar yet different in those two, but the idea of that everybody has a different reality in a sports organization is so important, right?
Yeah.
And that like certain people who played for the Packers had a certain relationship with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And that's real and that's true. And
Yeah.
not everybody is the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Not everybody's going to see eye to eye. And not everybody's going to agree on one thing. And not everybody's going to agree that, no, they did this or they were a supreme leader or whatever. But, it's just kind of sad in this age of the internet that more of these articles are surfacing. Because back in the early 2000s, late 90s, I don't think we would have seen any of these articles happen. But now, because everybody has an avenue to kind of showcase their opinion, you see the positive, the people trying to do good work, and you kind of see the negative of people trying to separate players, fans, whatever, But, yeah, we'll see what kind of year it is.
Maybe you should just trade Aaron Rodgers for Ben Roethlisberger.
No, that's okay.
That will solve everything.
We'll take
You don't even know who you want to take.
No. Your outside linebackers, Chicolo and Watt. Boom. But we'll give you Crosby,
Okay.
the kicker.
We'll keep TJ Watt and we'll trade Anthony Chicolo for Aaron Rodgers.
No.
Done.
Maybe we should just merge the teams.
Oh my God.
We'll cut Roethlisberger. Will be
yes.
half the games will be played. The home games will be played in Pittsburgh. Half the home games in Green Bay,
and then the other half in Toronto.
Yeah, other half in Toronto.
That's 3 halves.
I'll create a team here in Albuquerque, and then 4 halves. Boom, and we should call the NFL right now. As a matter of fact, that would be awesome. No, but so being in New Mexico. What, you've been here since 2012?
Yep, 7 years.
So you've been here long enough to experience the culinary delights that this region has to offer. And this being the Red and Green Report, do you steer more towards... And I've gotten pretty much the same answer from everybody, so this is going to be fun. What do you steer towards more, red chili or green chili?
Both.
Both, yes! That has been the consensus, I think. There's been a few people who have mentioned, it kind of depends on what you're eating, but both. So what's your favorite dishes?
So at Caps, when I first moved to Albuquerque, I really liked green and red chili enchiladas.
Okay.
And they would just smother the enchiladas with red and green chili.
And Caps doesn't exist anymore, does it?
I think it does.
I
think it still is operational. Yeah. They have coffee that's like cinnamon flavored.
That's like San Mateo Central area, right? Alvarado, like you said, yeah.
Nob Hill.
Yes.
East.
Yeah. Way east.
But yeah, so Caps had the awesome like red and green, and I didn't think that their red was better than their green or their green was better than their red, and so I wanted both. Mm-hmm. And then I started learning about actually the growth of chili itself, and the way in which red chili was red chili and green chili was green chili, and how you treated both, and then their respective flavors, and how they came together. Mm-hmm. So now I still prefer both. Kind of generally, whether it's enchiladas or huevos rancheros from Winnings.
Yeah.
But I will say there are times where I prefer one. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I prefer red, or sometimes I prefer green. And for instance, El Modelo is a delight of a restaurant that is on 2nd Street. Just south of downtown. And since I live in the South Valley, shout out South Valley Pride coming up April 28th. Yeah. I'll be there.
Okay.
since I live in the South Valley, it's really convenient to stop at El Modelo on the way to UNM or to downtown because it's just kind of going right up to 2nd Street from the South Valley and then heading north, and you pass El Modelo. And so I like their spare rib plate that they have, which is smothered in a soup of red chili that is like spicy and salty.
Oh man, it's so good.
Delicious. I'm thinking about getting some El Modelo for my graduation party.
Hey, yes, that is a fabulous idea. What's your favorite breakfast spot?
Ooh,
when you go out?
Probably. Got to keep it real. Got to keep it South Valley pride. Probably Barrera's Coffee House.
Oh, yeah. Those huevos rancheros, man. God.
Yeah.
Do you get the side of chicharrones?
Oh, I've never.
Oh, dude, it's so good.
But I've seen people do it.
Uh-huh.
And the last time I was there, I usually get the carne lavada breakfast plate.
Okay.
And I'll do red and green there because I'll get a bunch of red chili with the carne lavada, but then want some green chili too.
Yeah.
And then the last time I was there, I had it and I finished. And as I was like leaving, I saw somebody get a carne lavada plate, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I just had too.
Okay.
But they got a side of chicharron, and I was like,
dude,
what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, exactly.
It was huge and like delicious looking.
I in the winter, I'll get a bowl of green chili stew there, and I'll get a side of chicharrones, and dude, it's so good. But yeah, even I've seen people there, they will order a portion of chicharrones, a side of red chili, and a stack of tortillas, and that's it.
That sounds so good.
Yeah,
right now.
dude. Yeah, your basic, meal.
Yeah.
No bells and whistles, just simple, chicharrones, tortillas, red chili, and there might be some, frijoles, some beans in the mix, which is, again, basic, but it's so good, man.
I'm excited to take my family to these spots when they come. My family's coming for my graduation, May 11th. Not Dreamstyle Arena, the Pit.
Pit.
We're going to graduate at the Pit, not Dreamstyle Arena. And my family will be here on May 9th. And I'm really excited to take them to all these like great eateries.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that I'll never forget about Albuquerque until the, even beyond and into the afterlife, I'll remember that the food here is unlike any other.
Dude, yeah.
So exceptional. When I go home to Hawaii, which has amazing food as well, I yearn for New Mexican food.
Yeah, man.
So I'm excited to take my family around.
Nice.
Show them what's up.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you should. I'll make a list. No, you make the list. Sorry. I'm trying to impose. No. Yeah.
You can make a list, John.
I'll make a list too. We'll see if they match.
You can make a list, and I'd love to see it.
Word up, man. But as far as you've gone a really long way in a academic career that not really, I mean, it might seem like a lot of people conquer, but not a lot of people conquer. What advice would you give to somebody, in starting out, graduating high school, who wants to, not only get a bachelor's but move into a master's and also get a PhD? What advice would you like to give those young men and women?
Academia is not the end-all, be-all. In a way, it's not the same as education, but the place and the idea of academia, whether it's, like me getting a PhD and finishing a dissertation, getting an academic job, I don't feel like that's the end for me. That's not my sole purpose in life.
Yeah.
It has never been. And sometimes I felt myself dragging into an area where I was acting like it was the center of all life.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place, I think. And I think it captures a lot of folks.
Yeah. I agree.
I would say that not only is academia not the end-all, be-all, but use academia and education for justice, for bettering your communities, for yourself, and for the betterment of all people. And so I would say that, I haven't actually conquered academia. I would say that in some ways, it kind of got me. And I'm not going to die an academic. I'm going to die myself. And I want to die, one day for what I care about, and that's not academia. And so what I would tell just explicitly to anybody that's interested in, pursuing a master's degree or even just college in general, or a PhD or an academic job, be true to the work that you want to do and the relationships around you. That being with people, but also the actual physical environment.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
And let me just clarify. I mean, I know a lot of people have, they got their bachelor's, master's, and their PhDs. It just kind of, for me, it feels like, it is a lot of work, and I feel like a lot of people kind of get discouraged about getting those certain degrees, especially when they want to. There's a lot of hard work. But like you said, staying true to yourself will allow you to move forward. Doesn't necessarily have to be academia.
Yeah.
But it's cool. Like, you getting your dissertation is definitely inspiring. Seeing you up there defending, goosebumps, man. Like, oh. But it's not just the PhD, but what you've done to work towards your PhD, your writing, just conversations I've been in with you, and conversations I've also heard you have with other people.
Yeah.
And then the work you do with Red Nation, and then so I know there's a lot of high school kids, I'm going to go to college, but they don't know necessarily what they're going to do with that experience. So what I tell a lot of high school, well, I say a lot, like I talk to them on a regular basis, but the high school kids that I've spoken to, I tell them, maybe you want to travel a little bit after you graduate high school, or maybe you want to work a little bit. Maybe you want to do both, and there's nothing wrong with that. And who is it? What's his name? Does the Comedy Central News? Trevor Noah.
Yeah.
He has an interesting quote. He said, the cure for ignorance is traveling. And I thought, not a lot of students who graduate high school travel right away. It kind of takes them some time, or not at all. I have fifth grade students now who they've never been out of the city. And luckily growing up, my parents, we got to move around a lot, but it's like, travel, graduate, travel, get that experience in. But man, thank you for coming through. It was great hearing your story, man. Finally.
Yeah. Episode 7, baby.
Dude, we'll
That's
do
my
part
number.
2 we'll do part 2 in Toronto.
Oh, snap. All right. Done.
Yeah. That'll be cool. But man, thanks for stopping through. Sharing your knowledge and your experience and your stories. It's always a good time, man. Definitely.
Yeah, it's been awesome, John.
Thanks for bringing the beer.
Hi, niece.
All right. Until next time, peace.
Bye.
Peace. Bye.
Peace.
Peace out.